Hi, everyone. Welcome back to one more of our TrueML episodes. I am Nikunj, co founder and CEO at True Foundry. And today with us, we have Priya Mathur, who is the head of AI and devices at Google. And I'm extremely excited to have Priya join us because we actually haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of women leaders in AI and GenAI, like come and speak with us at TrueML. And this is something that we have been meaning to speak with, right? So I'm super excited to welcome you, Priya. I would love to have you invite, just add some more color about how you got into the field of machine learning and to your current role at Google as well. So if you can shed some more light on your background, that would be lovely to kick off the session.
Thanks, Nikunj, for having me here. Super excited to talk about AI and my journey. As part of my journey, I've been in AI space for over 10 years. Previously at Groupon, I was leading marketing data science, and I was solving challenges like how do we measure ROI of TV ads, or how do we measure incrementality of campaigns, or even channels like email and push notifications. It was a very interesting journey. For the last 5 years at Google, I have been solving challenges related to product data science and currently heading AI and ML for devices and services at Google. Um, I can talk about more about the challenges I'm solving here, but that's been my journey.
Very thanks a lot, Priya, for setting that background. And I would love to dive deep into some of the challenges that you all are solving. But also, just one other thing, you have also been an active participant in the Women in ML Symposium, and normally you have been making a lot of contributions, to just women leaders in AI, sort of a thing. So would love to hear a little bit about that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it might be the mode of learning for others, but for me, the mode of learning is reading, researching, being part of such forums. And I think Women in ML was one of the biggest forums I've been part of. This year we had 25,000 registrations and like thousands of attendees attending live. And it is definitely led by women, but it is also for like everyone. It's not just for women. And like for me, like being a part of this was learning from other leaders in ML, as well as sharing my learning. So all that I've learned so far, all that I'm learning, I wanted to share it with broader community, and Women in ML was one of the best forums I could find. um,
Absolutely. For me also, the topics, I feel like that I have actually just taken any kind of teaching sessions with anyone, just explaining to our friends, colleagues, etc. I just feel like those topics I now understand so much better than stuff that I've just personally read and moved on, basically. So completely relate with it.
yeah, same here.
Yeah. Priya, basically, the problem that you mentioned about getting into solving data science, like TV ad attribution, stuff like that's a very difficult problem to solve from a machine learning perspective. It would be very nice to hear about what's the kind of take that you had on the problem, what type of tools, technologies, models that you ended up building out, and how did you also structure the team to solve that problem as well? Because that's the other very open question in a lot of companies, like how are people structuring their AI teams to solve complicated problems like these, which has engineering, data science, infra, all of those aspects to it, basically.
I think that's a great question, Nikunj. And back at Groupon, solving problems like measuring the value of TV ads, like I think it all starts with understanding the problem really well, working with the partners, working with finance. At the time, I worked closely with finance because they were sponsoring TV ads, and they wanted to measure like what is the customer acquisition cost. If we spend $1 million, like for example, like per customer, per new customer, what is my customer acquisition cost? How can you estimate it? So I think like that was one way of looking at, or uh, what is the incremental revenue I can drive from these TV ads. So talking with partners, or your sponsors, project sponsors, really understanding what do they want out of this, and then distilling that into a data science problem. So in this case, it was about computing customer acquisition cost. And when we talk about customer acquisition cost, it's basically like how much are we spending, which is not something we decide, but finance or other teams would decide. And then what we would have to estimate is how many new customers can we drive from TV ads. Now that is the prediction problem, because it's a prediction problem of like estimation, estimating the baseline. Actual customers, you can obviously, in online world, you can track how many new customers are you driving since you start showing TV ads in any region. But like what would be a counterfactual? That's a data science problem. Like really understanding the baselines and creating models, machine learning models for that was the biggest challenge. In this specific problem, after understanding what the goal was, goal was, which was estimating the right CAC, and estimating the right CAC, and then understanding the baseline or baseline or counterfactual for how many new customers we would have driven in this time period in this region if we didn't run TV ads. Then we would obviously also think of the model, and at the time we use ARIMA time series forecasting models. There are many approaches. There's Bayesian approach, but we use this approach to predict the baseline. And then once we defined what the model is going to be, we had to now think through of the data. Like, okay, what signals can we collect internally with all the privacy approvals that would help us measure that? And signals would be the marketing activity on other channels within Groupon. We would also include demographics of a region, like a lot of customer data, but everything anonymized and everything encrypted, to basically feed as input data to the model to predict how many new customers we would have driven in a certain region if we didn't run TV ads. And I think that was like the biggest problem I solved at Groupon, among other problems, because it had a big buck involved. And we really wanted to measure like the true incrementality, ensuring that we were not blowing up the dollars, like we were not going above the target CAC or acquisition cost.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Understood. Cool. Thank you so much. And fast forward to your time at Google. Now, the charter that you are after at Google, heading the AI devices and services, seems like you like there's a quite a broad effort that you're taking up. So, if you can help us orient on what are the things that fall within this charter, what are you trying to what is your team trying to accomplish here? That would be very very helpful as well.
Absolutely. So, Nikunj, at Google, I have the opportunity to use pretty much the same tools, but to solve different problems. Problems are related to product data science. So, what I'm responsible for is improving funnels, product funnels for device and services business. And when we say devices, it's like a whole suite of Nest devices, Google Home devices that we have, as well as services, which means subscriptions that we have based on these devices. It's the same data science problems, like how can we measure the impact of a feature that we launch, or how can we measure the impact of a new device we are launching, or how can we increase conversion rates in a specific funnel. So broadly speaking, it's different problems in a very different business with different constraints, because we are in a devices world. We have challenges with data. It's not as good as online world where you can track every activity and use it to make a personalized experience for the user. Here we have to personalize it differently. So yeah, that's the charter. It's a big charter, definitely bigger scope and very different, but the tools remain the same. Uh, Data science tools remain the same.
Super nice to hear this. Devices, Google's devices obviously span a wide like a plethora of different offerings to the end user, and I can imagine the magnitude of data coming from all of these would be humongous to deal with. But at the same time, there's a lot of privacy angle to how you deal with the devices data. So this must complicate the machine learning problem quite a bit, Priya. Super excited to hear that you're solving this.
Absolutely.
And the paper, I also came across one of the papers that you have published around large language model powered chatbots for natural language queries, etc. Right? Is that paper also published in the similar context of the work that you're doing, or was that a different context altogether as well?
Absolutely. So I think that's a very interesting problem, very close to my heart because it was my 20% project. So it was not specific to device and services. And I have been learning a lot about uh, deep learning, Gen AI, and for the last 2 years, and I wanted to use it for my team at work, and it just ended up being something useful to broader community at Google. But the idea was, how can we leverage large language models to to write SQL queries one and then to return responses just like a data scientist would. Like when scientists work with let's say product managers or marketing folks, you don't give them SQL queries. They ask you a question and you write a bunch of SQL queries. You understand, data scientists understand data very well. They understand which what data means, where is it stored, and how can I leverage it to come up with the insight that, let's say, product manager is looking for. We wanted to simplify the process because there's very few data teams in every company, like very few folks, and I wanted to remove I wanted to remove ad hocs that my team handles, because these are questions and answers are more like ad hocs and not strategic projects that we work on. So took it up as a 20%, spent a couple of months researching how we could build a product like that. How is it possible? And when we had a working model, an MVP, shared it with leadership, got sponsorship, and made a full-fledged product out of it, which was like really helping folks get answers quickly. The idea was to get answers quickly without having to depend on data teams getting you the answer. If you're a non-technical person in a company, you should be able to get data answers quickly and make data driven decisions quickly. So we made this process faster for them, at the same time removing the ad hoc workload from data teams, and so we can continue to focus on strategic projects, which is like measuring the impact of a big project or a big feature, or like building machine learning models to improve customer experience. Like those are the strategic bets that I wanted my team to work on, instead of working on these. So yeah, that was the reason we worked on this, and it resulted in a defensive publication, which is what you see online. And yeah, and also the product, which is now used by so many people at Google.
Wow, like you actually took 20%, like one of your 20% projects resulted in such an impactful project, because literally I could tell you, Priya, I talk to a lot of enterprises as a founder in the same space, right? And this is a problem that we get asked for like every single day. That can I use LLMs to query my structured data, convert it to like SQL and stuff? And of course, there are tools out there that people can use. But like one of the things that we have noticed is it does not work out of the box so well, or like even if it's able to like kind of give responses, it um, it fails in a very like you would not understand that the query is a mistake, and like you might just get wrong data or something. So that's like one of the worries that a lot of enterprises that we work with have. So on in that regard, like I wanted to ask two follow-ups. Number one, is the product that comes out of like as part of this paper, like is it available to everyone for people to try it out? That's number one. And number two, what did like in terms of the scope, like does this include like SQL joins and stuff, or like is it specific to like a single table that like this is solving for?
So this is an internal product. So
So
unfortunately,
not available for everyone.
not available to others. I would wish that to happen. And second, there's more than just one table, one join. Like also, it was definitely started by me and my co-founder, but then it required a lot of cross collaboration
For sure.
with other teams at Google. So we learned a lot, and we shared our learnings, and we presented a lot of forums. Uh, it's not just one table, one data source. It's basically building a chatbot which can understand the context of user's question, understand the user permissions, which does user have access to the data sets or
Mm.
that it needs to query, and then querying those data sets, and like it does everything obviously behind the like behind the curtain. Like user does not, the user just gets a response in microseconds. But like I think it's more than just one table or one SQL. It's really like, imagine like entire database for a specific org. We also had to restrict it to a specific org, but like we have a differential access. That
Mm.
means only if I had access to a specific data, only then will I get a response. If I didn't have access, I'll get a response that I don't have access to a specific data. So it's like it's more than that, and that's why it took months, and that's why the challenge. And it was really good to learn from teams across Google and like what they were doing to solve these problems.
It's amazing. This data access control part, along with this natural language to SQL thing, actually complicates this problem so much more. Like I cannot tell you enough number of times how many customers ask us for this thing.
It's like on that, Nikunj, it's like it's a burning, like definitely the pain I and my team had in at Google, but like I also had that group on. So it's something like I imagine just with my own experience, like a lot of data teams would have that pain. Like we all want to work on like long term projects, but we also have these questions that are asked by leadership that need to be answered right away, and we're not available. So I think this was like a really cool project that I worked on. And also one thing I want to add is not just using LLMs. Like LLMs are only as good as you know how to tame them, but like really using technology like RAG, like we fine tune, we use RAG, we built agents. Like it's a culmination of a lot of technologies all related to large language models that led to this. So that's just something that I wanted to add to this.
For sure, completely understand that this won't work out of the box if you just threw this question to an LLM without the supporting ecosystem. Makes sense. So Priya, like one other thing that I wanted to dive deep into was you actually have this relatively unique experience where you have seen or used AI both in e-commerce at Groupon and now in Google Home platform, right? Would love to understand what are the key differences of using AI ML in these two very different settings in some way, right? So that's one. And how have you applied some of the learnings from your e-commerce times at Google to monetization and Gen AI? At Groupon to monetization and Gen AI at Google. So we'd love to understand this, I guess, differences and similarity in some way.
Absolutely. I think there's a great question, something that I've been wanting to talk about. Talking about the, like, I would want to first talk about the similarities between my experiences and different industries, like you said, right? Groupon, all e-commerce, and currently Google, which is like product focused, like device and services. So I think AI in both were like similar in a way, like the tools, like the machine learning models that are used to solve the problems in both industries are pretty much the same. At least that's been my experience. Be it experimentation, pretty much the same. Like when you have to design A/B tests, it's pretty much the same process. You start with a hypothesis, like what's the metric you want to measure, what are the guardrails, and like and the instrumentation you need to have, and like what should be your what should be the sample. Like pretty much the same process when it comes to experimentation, machine learning, or be it business intelligence. Same in both my experiences. Another thing that was same is like working, collaborating with partners. Like it all starts with stakeholders. Yes, projects like chatbot start with us, which is like we are elevating, we are increasing productivity for all of Google, but also pretty much it's coming from our own experience. But most of the projects come with like, hey, we have a business problem, we need your help. That was the case at Groupon, that's the case at Google. um, and it's not so much of an ad hoc, like hey, we have a business problem, but like we have like this planning cycle. We have quarterly planning, yearly planning. So before beginning of the year we have yearly planning where we talk with the partners at Google. It's product, marketing, planning, strategy. We plan like, okay, what are the biggest problems we need to solve in device and services, for example? What are
Hmm.
your problems and how could we help you solve them? um, and we also check-ins every quarter if this is still the problem or has the problem changed. Same thing we did at Groupon as well. It started with our stakeholders, our partners, what their problems were and how we could help them solve. So that is also similar between both industries and both my experiences. I think the other thing that's common across is really like working with data, like not just the data science tools, but data tools are also very similar. Uh, so yeah, I think these are the similarities. But talking about differences, like very different problems at Groupon. It was all about incrementality. Like I think the theme, if I had to sum up my Groupon experience, it was like my team was responsible for measuring incrementality of anything, like incrementality of a campaign, incrementality of a channel or TV ads or radio ads. It was like really measuring, like because as any startup, it was like what is my bang for the buck.
Hmm.
So every dollar counted and what's the ROI on my dollar. So that's why incrementality. At Google, it's all about how, not about the dollars so much, but really about how do we drive engagement, how do we drive retention, how do we reduce churn, for example, or how do we get new users. So it's more about the product funnel and not so much about the marketing efficiency or like the number of dollars that product would bring in. So that's very different. So I had to like completely take off my measuring ROI of every dollar hat to, and I had to wear a hat of like really thinking about the product, thinking about the users, how can could we enhance user experience, like more so about user experience, like because all the engagement, all stickiness or churn, it's all about user experience. If that is not good, it leads to higher churn. So I think I've become more of a user advocate being at Google. Like one, that's the Google culture, that's the Googliness, but also because I'm working in product data science, so it's all about users and user journeys. So that's, I think, very very different. The other difference is also like one is a e-commerce online world where everything user does is tracked, and that can help to create personalized offers for users or personalized products for users. In offline world, in my current job, it's different. The metrics we track are different, the signals we track are different. So obviously we work with the limitations of data we can track, how much retention we have, and we respect user privacy. So we have to think of very innovative ways to still solve the business problems, but with data limitations. So yeah, that's, I think, that would be
Makes
the
sense.
difference. Yeah.
Amazing. And like Priya, thank you so much for sharing this. Like this is a sort of like insight that like most people who like most people would not be privy to, because like like this kind of people working in two completely different industries on two completely different types of settings, and I guess different types of companies. When you put those filters, like it becomes like only a handful of people who are privy to that kind of an experience. And building on the same thing, Priya, I wanted to ask one more thing, which is with LLMs, there's a lot of like controversies that are happening, right? Now, would love to hear your thoughts on how can LLMs be leveraged to enhance, like to foster trust amongst the users, right? And this trust could be coming again, like from an online world. Let's say like some tools that are getting launched by a company like Groupon, or in the devices world, like where like we have companies like Google, or like for that matter, like even generically products getting built with LLMs, right? So, would love to hear your thoughts on how can we like foster more trust.
I think for these technologies, trust will come when you understand this technology a little better. Just how it happened with internet, when it wasn't overnight that people started buying on Amazon. There was
Right.
an adoption curve, and that in during that adoption curve, people understood that internet is safe if I protected my identity if I protected my financial purchases. So I think there was a lot of education there that happened in the adoption curve. Same thing I expect to happen in AI. Like people have to understand a little bit of how this Gen AI works, how these large language models that are powering ChatGPT, Gemini, and others are working. Also, like users, if they have control over their data, just like what happened with GDPR, then they would have more trust. Like if I can wipe out my data anytime from a particular portal or from
Right.
that data being used in a model, then that will build trust. I think also trust comes with the fact that, hey, I'm taken care of. Getting that feeling would be when we have more policy and regulation in place, which will ensure that data is not misused, users data is not misused, and for training these models, like my personal data should not be misused for training these models, or it should not be used to create deepfakes, or I should not be targeted with deepfakes, or if I'm targeted with deepfakes, or if I lose my money to a fraud which was caused by deepfake, is there a regulation which protects a user like me? I think that will build trust. And like I would just wrap it up with education. It all comes with education. Users will trust these technologies built by companies, built by AI companies, if they understand this technology, if there is regulation in place to protect users, if this technology is used against them, if it is abused by certain folks. So I think like it's all about like education, transparency, and regulation.
Amazing. Actually, like, this is one of the more complicated topics when it comes to AI, right? Like to talk about one of the more complicated topics. And like, I rarely hear people being so articulate about like, topics so complicated and sensitive as this. So you summarized it quite well, Priya. Like three main points that you refer to. Like number one, which is like just having more control on your data set. Number two, feeling protected by policies that, like, nothing is going to come and harm you personally or hold you accountable or responsible. And number three, just knowledge and understanding, like, fear, like removing the fear of unknown, I guess, in some way, right? So these are the three main pillars of establishing trust, and it's very meaningful. I can in fact see the application of how I can, like, start leveraging some of this when we go and talk to other enterprises about, like, using Gen AI and LLMs as a startup founder as well. Thank you so much.
Also, I would like to add, Nikunj, like the platform that you have, the podcast like this, it helps in educating users. At
Excellent.
some point, it is going to reach non-tech users, and it is going to help them understand that there is this technology is there to help me if I know how to use it. So, yeah, thanks to you for having a platform like this and a podcast like this.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you. That is exactly the goal. Like, educating our users more and more in, like, technical topics, and like, like, how people are leveraging these technologies as well. Cool. So, like, one other thing that I would love to understand, and people are very, like, on the same note of, like, being scared of what's happening, like using, etc. People are very scared of the term hallucinations, right? Like whenever you hear about LLMs, like seldom do you hear that people are not scared of, or what if the model hallucinates, right? So I'd love to understand that how can we mitigate this problem, if at all, or, like, just hearing your thoughts on hallucinations with LLMs, basically.
You may not have heard this, what I'm going to say next. Hallucinations we think is a problem, but it's actually a feature of LLMs. Like they are designed to be algos that can think, they are not designed to be algorithms or models that factually state correct information. Yes, we can use different technologies to make them factually correct, but that's a feature. Hallucination is a feature, which is why we are able to create what you saw with Sora. We are able to create these videos because of hallucinations. That's a feature. Like now, but we want large language models to be used for chatbots, accurate information. So we definitely have to customize them to be factually correct.
Right.
But just want to say to all the audience out there, it's a feature, it's not a problem. Now, still for factually correct information, you want models to hallucinate less. You want them to be less creative. So there are many ways to do that. There are many ways to control. There'll never be a world where you are able to make sure that model never hallucinates, but you can always minimize it. And there are ways, like a couple of ways. Like one, the easiest one that everyone has at hand is prompt engineering. You give
Right.
enough context to the model, give enough examples, and it will not hallucinate. Like it will, you can minimize hallucination. You can try to get to accurate answer if you use the right prompt engineering frameworks as well as context. So that is available to everyone, every user. But there are others. There are others, like you can fine tune models. That is more for technical folks, like researchers and engineers. They can fine tune the models with like domain specific data. Then
Hmm.
it, like if you are trying to ask questions, medical questions, you cannot expect these generalized models to give you factually right information about anything in medical questions. But if it was fine tuned on just medical data, then yes, it will hallucinate less. There are other techniques. There's also retrieval augmented generation. You're giving context, but you're giving context in the query, but then context is coming from the factual knowledge base. You can also improve data quality. A lot of data quality, like hallucinations, also happen because the data that is used for training large language models has not been processed in a way that it removes the bias, it removes the incorrect. Like to understand data quality means providing factually correct data also to models, because right
Right.
now these models are trained on everything that's available on web, but everything that's available on web is not factually correct. Like you can have fact checking algos and also human eval. Human evaluation is very important for reducing hallucinations for large language models. So all of these will help reduce hallucinations. But wrapping it up, it's not a problem. It's actually a feature. Uh, in a specific context, it's a feature.
For sure. I get where you're coming from. And actually, just to double click on this for the listeners, what Priya is basically saying here is that LLMs by themselves, like all they do is hallucinate, right? Like that's a feature, not a bug. And if they were not hallucinating, they would not be able to generate all these beautiful like poems and essays and like the answers that we ask them to. I think when people talk about that they want to avoid hallucinations, they actually mean that the apps built on top of LLMs, they should not hallucinate in some way, right? Which means, like, let's say if you ended up building a question answering system for a bunch of documents yourself, right? Like internally, that's an application built using an LLM. And the expectation from that application is that it's only giving answers from your documents, but not from like some cooked up previous thing that the LLM was trained or decided to hallucinate, basically. So essentially, LLMs plus some other tools together should not hallucinate, but LLMs by themselves are meant to hallucinate. I guess it's a very, very good point to note in some way. Yeah.
And you summarized it really well, Nikunj.
Thank you, Priya. Cool. And imagine that with all these fundamental sounding problems that we are trying to fix around LLMs, right? Like we are actually just scratching the surface of what are the things that can be done with generative AI and LLMs, right? Like, do you have a world view on how generative AI is going to impact different types of industries? And also maybe alter like workplace practices and stuff, Priya.
So this is something that I keep thinking about, Nikunj. How is it going to impact industries, and what industries will it impact more or less? Some of the industries that have not been benefited by tech yet, or as much by tech yet, are finance, healthcare, education. We have seen huge boost from technology, like with virtual online education and like virtual healthcare, virtual banking. But that's all been the impact. Like we haven't seen like exponential gains as yet. With Gen AI, we are going to see exponential gains in these three industries: healthcare, finance, and education. And that's my understanding. It's going to impact other industries for sure, but more so these. Especially about healthcare, like I'll give you an example. Like drug discovery is something that takes years and years to come up with new antibiotics or other drugs. With Gen AI, you can simulate. Like there's a lot of simulation involved in molecules and like what should I say in virtual patients, like all of that simulation can be handled by Gen AI. So it's like our drug discovery is going to be accelerated exponentially with Gen AI. That's just one example. You can actually like so much in healthcare can will be impacted with generative AI, and that's just one example. Across the industries, the theme is going to be this, as per my understanding. It's going to increase productivity, which is what we see in chatbots, be it chatbots, customer service bots, or any sales bot, marketing bots. It's going to increase productivity. It is going to personalize experiences. Like now if we have these virtual agents that can talk to users in human language, we can personalize experiences much more. Like now that creating a creative just for Nikunj would be so much easier, that I can create a creative just for you. So I can create much more personalized experiences at much lesser cost, at much faster pace with generative AI. So that's going to be the theme across industries. Um, and like specific work that will be impacted by generative AI would be content creation, that everyone would agree would become super easy, super easy, easy, and also like cost effective. I also talked about personalized learning. Virtual education was one step, but like I think 100 steps ahead would be with generative AI, that you can actually have personalized feedback for, let's say, you based on your on learning journey. And I think we'll also see a lot of skill realignment. Like use this example. Like when we had industrial age, like we moved from manual work to industries doing the same work at scale, right? So there was this alignment. Like you did not need manual workers, however you needed workers who could operate machines in industry. So there was like skill shift. In this era also, there's going to be a huge skill shift that's going to happen. And where we're not going to need a lot of folks that need to program, or but we'll need folks who can like do more strategic thinking, creative thinking, and can build and maintain these tools, like maintain large language models or applications that are built on top of it. So that's my generalized view of how like it's going to impact industries. Like it's all positive, but also like there's this negative view that we'll need a lot of reskilling and upskilling, because otherwise it's going to take away like the repetitive jobs.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. And like this the way you phrase it, right? Skill shift is probably the right way to think about this, compared to like how a lot of people think that it's going to take away all the jobs and stuff. And like examples are very similar to what you gave. Like earlier, like for doing accounts, maybe you needed to be good at calculations yourself, and like later you basically, like, the skill that is now required is, can you be really good at Excel? And like Excel is going to do a lot of it yourself, right? So today, like, a lot of things that we are doing, let's say in marketing or content generation, we have to be really good at that ourselves. But maybe in the future we need to become, how can we use, let's say, LLMs as co-pilot, and like how efficiently can we leverage them to do this task for us, so we can do a lot more interesting stuff, if we learn how to use the tools very well, basically. So like that completely makes sense to me. Nice. Awesome. Priya, I think this has been phenomenal. Like, you have covered like such wide range of topics, from like, your different data science experience at Groupon and Google, to like, how the new recent future look like with generative AI and stuff. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights with everyone. And I want to thank you on the behalf of everyone listening here, to take the time and speak with us. So thank you so much, Priya.
Thanks, Nikunj. Thanks for having me here. It was amazing to learn about your views and share mine with the audience here.